we are on Edge Radio, and this is Media Tackle, everything in and around the world of media and entertainment and popular culture. And it's a great pleasure for me today to welcome Paul Conley. Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Norris.
It's a pleasure. And Paul, I brought you in because I really want to take an opportunity to talk about the wonderful, crazy, bizarre world and a very normal and everyday and boring world of video games, because I've really loved the work you've been doing integrating video games, in particular your latest project on Minecraft, and putting the real world into it.
Yeah.
So what have you been, just give our listeners a hint as to what you've been doing in the crazy world of Minecraft as an honours student here at the University of Tasmania.
So basically, the year started off at the art school, coming up with some sort of idea based around video games. And during a meeting with my supervisor, I showed him some images of some mosaics that...
Oh, and full disclosure, I was supervising a little bit of this project at the start, right?
Yeah,
which is how
supervisor for most of the year.
Yeah, I heard about it. And then you then went on to bigger and grander ideas for it. But yeah, so we were talking about how to get this idea of...
Yeah. So my idea was to go something more practical, more realistic. And then I showed him this image of a mosaic, and he says, "Oh, there's no reason you can't use Minecraft as your medium." And which threw me back a bit. I'm like, okay, this might go somewhere else. And then I still kept playing with the real items. And then lockdown happened. And I'm like, well, if I can't go to the art school, I'll build the art school.
And this was, and Toby has also been involved in developing the project.
Yes.
So Toby, I think, pitched that idea to you.
Yes, he was the pitcher of the idea.
Yeah. Put A and Z together, because I love some of the other work you've showed me where you've actually, what was that project where you made out of cardboard boxes?
Yeah, that was a sort of a very similar premise for this one, where it was based partly on some ancient caves in France where the people aren't allowed to visit anymore, and partly on the Far Cry Primal game.
Far Cry Primal. Okay, so Far Cry Primal, for those that don't know, is a video game, kind of first-person video game.
Yes.
Where you're given quests to do, but it's in a kind of GTA-type setting, right? Like you can get guns and you can explode stuff.
In normal Far Cry games, yes, but in Primal, it's set back way back in...
Right, Primal, yeah. This is the one set like Neolithic period.
Yeah. So I was thinking I could build like an ancient cave where it's coming from an environment that you can't visit for real. So people can walk into this giant cave and get this surrounding sense. And there was also like a narrative being spoken through some Raspberry Pis. And
so Raspberry Pis, for those that don't know, is a small, I mean, here's a wonderful bit of 21st century computer of the masses equipment, right? These are small, tiny computer brains which you can do basic and quite advanced programming within, right? So there's like Raspberry Pi, various other types of basically small. Would you say primitive computers? How would you describe the Raspberry Pi?
I'd say like just a low-key, like minimal computer where it serves one specific purpose rather than a multitude of purposes like a normal computer would. In
fact, the Edge Studio is driven by one of those devices as well. The thing that's pumping this out to the air is a Pi. It's making me hungry. So you had what you did is you drew inspiration from the real world history space. So those kind of caves, which one can no longer enter, that are full of ritual and sacredness.
Yeah, the cave paintings and everything.
And then you also drew inspiration from the fictional fantasy world of gaming and the immersiveness of that space to then create, in one corner of the Hunter Street kind of display space, I guess, through boxes, a cave to enter into.
Yeah. It was quite an experience having to build like this structure just out of cardboard and tape. I think I went through like 13 rolls of tape, and it just built up over the period of the year and turned out really amazing at the end.
So in today's show, for the next hour, what we're going to do is journey into this world of doing things that weren't intended maybe with video games. That is, in terms of the engineers, designers, story writers of games probably didn't anticipate where a gamer would take them, right? So your own work as an artist and a student being able to integrate into Minecraft a actual incredibly accurate architecture buildings of the Hunter Street campus, University of Tasmania here in Hobart. But then, of course, our own experiences as well playing games, how it kind of creates a biography of our own lives through it, as well as ways in which people play games that we've seen, which are just really full of creativity, like odd kind of like, gee, I didn't realize you could do that in the game, or wow, someone did that in the game, or someone did that and thought of that had nothing to do with the game. So for the next hour, sit back, enjoy the discussion. It's one that I've really been, again, looking forward to talking about because it has gotten a lot of coverage recently coming into this kind of a period of the COVID quarantine space, stories of being in isolation, and games being one of that spaces which a lot of people have been enjoying and kind of losing themselves in. And also within that, a lot of debates around mental health issues, the appropriateness or inappropriateness of the time management involved in games. So it's getting a lot of interest. So I want to kind of take a backseat, talk a little bit about our own experiences. So sit back, enjoy. We'll go to a song. This we have Destroy Everything by Jesse Locke coming up next. So this is Edge Radio and Media Tackle. And this is Media Tackle. I'm Craig Norris, PhD, dropping the knowledge, and joined by Paul Conley, honors student. Well, actually, you've. I mean, this was your. I've got the opportunity to talk to you at the end of this project, right? So you've completed over the last year, 2020. What a year it's been. The project called Memory Block, which has integrated Hunter Street into Minecraft. And actually, before I forget, let's say that people can actually see this somewhere, right?
Yes. So as of the 16th of December, from memory, to the 2nd of January, it's going to be featured at the Images of Tasmania exhibition at the Long Gallery.
Images of Tasmania, Long Gallery, 16th of December. Great. And it's called Images of Tasmania.
Yes.
So keep that in mind, guys. As you hear this amazing project, do know that you can check that out on the 16th of December. So let's talk a bit about Memory Block. Where does this name come from? What does Memory Block mean?
So it was basically a combination of a subtle recreation of some of my select memories at the art school, along with Minecraft and its nature, which is blocks. So that's sort of where the name Memory Block came from. It's a melding of the two.
Right, yeah, because what Minecraft has presented you is this opportunity. It's a kind of, wow, let's assume out there are people that probably have never seen, played, or experienced Minecraft. Let's try and abridge what Minecraft is. What is Minecraft?
So Minecraft is basically an open world game where you have the option of surviving in a hostile world to survive, fight off creatures, and defeat the dragon at the end. Or you can take the creative route and, unlimited by resources, you can create basically anything you want.
So there's the game part of it. So many people would say, okay, yeah, it sounds like a game, right? You can play it in the survival mode and you get to fight monsters, and there's a quest and so forth. But then, you've got this other space which Minecraft is allowing players to enjoy, which is just this crafting world, right?
Yeah.
But it's a really granular crafting world, right? For instance, the mechanics around being able to build tables and everything.
Yeah.
You have to reverse engineer back to base elements.
Yeah, basically. So the game doesn't actually have like a table in it. So you have to go with like a fence post with a piece of carpet on top, or they have scaffolding now. So you just put a bit of scaffolding on the ground and put some carpet over that. So
you have to get an axe and cut down a tree. Now within so we have these building blocks. So many people also describe it as kind of like a Lego game. You get to like put pieces together. It's immensely popular. It's hugely influential. The visuals of it are kind of very blocky, which might surprise some people.
Yeah.
That if they think of video games all being about the perfection of reality, that it looks very much like the real. Minecraft goes in the other direction, which is kind of unapologetically almost kind of that 8-bit vibe, right? It's very blocky, but that's part of its charm, and also the Lego narrative of it, right? That you can see how blocks go together. You can see how it all fits.
I've seen clips of upgraded graphics of the game where they're using ray tracing and the blocks look super realistic and the lighting is super realistic, and it just brings it all together, still in its Minecraft nature with blocks, but it just looks absolutely fantastic and spectacular.
And then we have the first example again of that idea that one of the wonderful things about gaming, of course, is that as opposed to watching a movie or a television show, which is already completed, or reading a book, here in a game, you can kind of mod it. You, as a player, if there's some access you're given to some of the code, or the producers allow you to add, change, or mod the game, we can get things like this where they take the blockiness and they give it this super polished, pristine surface.
Yeah. For this project, I completely avoided any like modding or even using the more updated version of the game. I went back to the old version where it was very limited. And so having to build things like some of the printing presses or the woodworking tools that are featured in the art school, I'm like, okay, if I put this post here, this trapdoor here, this bed here, I'll make it look somewhat what the machine looks like.
So this is the project, right?
Yeah.
So you know this building really intimately. You did your undergraduate there, and then you decided to replicate it in Minecraft.
Yeah.
Down to quite what's the smallest thing? Like how tiny did you go into the detail? What's the most detailed?
Most detailed?
Like cups?
I would actually probably say it was the machines I just mentioned, that the printing press machines. It was quite hard to get down the littler details with blocks so big. I mean, I could have used like a flower pot as a mug or something. But
And for those that don't know this building, how big is it? Like, it's not a small.
It's not a small building. Actually, its exact measurements escape me right now.
But it's a huge thing. Like, it includes so we've got production facilities within it. We've got at least one lecture theatre I know of. How many lecture theatres are in there? 2?
There is the one main lecture theatre, but then there's like other little seminar rooms spread out across the campus.
So again, it's a full campus, so it's a substantial size. But it's would you say you've created it all under one roof mainly, or you've included some of the satellite spots within it?
Well, I've noticed during the research that the buildings is made up of about 5 miniature buildings. Like the whole campus is made of 5 buildings. So I sort of shaped them to the exact way that they are, and I discovered that while most of the sections are straight, most 1 or 2 parts weren't straight, they were more tapered. And so working in a game that's natured on blocks, it was very interesting and quite tricky to line these shapes up, so line these lines up that are on an angle to be correct. And even on the inside, it was those lines were angled again, and it made life quite challenging.
Look, I'm sure there's a maths phrase for it in terms of the extrapolation of it's not an error, but a kind of deviation.
Yeah.
Where, so for instance, Minecraft forces you to build on a grid.
Yeah.
But as you found out when you were building some of the walls and stuff, you'd start at one end, but then you'd get, like, let's say it's about 1 kilometer or so into the other end of where this building is, and you'd find, wow, these sides of the building aren't fitting anymore. They're not joining. How did that happen? And it's that kind of inconsistency with the built real environment. Because I guess you're not an architect in training.
No.
So as an artist, how did you approach that discrepancy?
So luckily I had some floor plans that I'd gotten from the art school.
Now, luckily, so these just fell into your hands?
Literally just fell into my hands, where I was going to ask someone if I could borrow some plants, expecting to get a no because they're sensitive materials.
That's right.
But I went to the library one day and there they were, just sitting on a table next to a computer. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just take these.
See, for me, if I was a fiction writer, this is sounding like one of these great mystery novels. So gee, these plans are sitting there perfectly there, like I needed those. I guess they might. Right, so again, it fell into your hands. And if this was a mystery novel, then I've got to ask you, did you find any discrepancies in terms of, we were talking again about the maths discrepancies in terms of, but then, of course, there's this idea, as anyone that watches kind of Da Vinci's Code type stuff would say, did you find a code within the making of Hunter Street where it's like, there seems to be a room here which isn't accounted for. There seems to be a space now that we've had to explore and dig in. That's a time travel portal or something.
I'd say the biggest mystery was there is, in the main courtyard of the art school, there is an abandoned courtyard that they don't use anymore. And behind those, the buildings that face Evan Street, I have no idea what's in there. Completely devoid of anything, as far as I know.
Yes.
So when it came to these sections, I had to leave them empty. I had no memories of these.
It's interesting when you're only able to see the surface of something, and then as you're trying to flesh it out, literally here in terms of provide substance to the exterior, you're left with these questions.
Yeah.
How do I account for this large space that I've never been in?
Yeah, I basically just had to go with what it looked like on the outside, put the walls where they belonged from the plans, and leave it at that.
So did you feel like you needed to have access to any of these spaces, or?
Some spaces I needed some access to, but largely it was just pretty much free range to walk around, take photos. There was about 400 of those. But yeah, most of the time I could just get around where I wanted. Some rooms were locked off, but I was easily given access.
Now, one of the things that I loved about this project was, of course, it was occurring at a time where many students, like yourself, were shut out of the school space, the university space, right? So in Tassie, we had the hard lockdown where for, like say, I think from March on, it was very limited or no access to these spaces. So here you were working away at recreating Hunter Street while stuck learning at home and studying at home online. Did that experience? Were you surprised at that experience? How that made you feel about that location because you couldn't get to it daily?
Slightly. I mean, I had taken a bunch of photos before we got locked down, and then I had resources like Google Maps where I could view the exterior if I needed to. Basically, the first semester was spent building the exterior, building the walls and everything, so that was fine. So I wasn't too sort of unencumbered by lockdown.
But because you could remember the building quite
exactly, well. Yeah. There was at one point earlier in the year where some of my classmates were a bit concerned about the project, but once we were starting having like crits online through Zoom, they were like, "Oh, this is really great! I can view the art school, and I can't go there, but I can still have a walk around, see what it looks like." And they started thinking, "Okay, we might have something here."
Yeah, look, we're interesting creatures of habit in that regard. If you're a student and your routine is to go into school or uni each day, having that removed suddenly leaves quite a hole, and it can be weeks of kind of craving that, or kind of maybe even not realizing how you crave that.
Yeah.
And then through the video game like Minecraft, as you were talking about showing it to other students to get some feedback, it can suddenly elicit these feelings of nostalgia, of kind of like, oh, that's great. Because I can't get to that location, seeing it now, even in Minecraft, is satisfying.
Yeah.
There's something very rich about that.
And yeah, now viewing it in such a different environment too, is in a virtual environment with all these blocks around. So they were like, oh, it's the art school. It's something I recognize, but it looks so different.
Well, seeing that, yeah, look, and having seen it myself, it does leave me with that desire to suggest having two versions of the game. One in survival world, right? You put the game into a survival world, and you see what a creeper exploding does, or what happens, like how post-apocalyptic does it become in that setting if you allow the game engine to do with it as it does as a game.
There was some ideas being thrown back and forth of what I could do differently to the art school. So maybe in the printmaking studio, for example, instead of having all the machines there, have a miniature forest there, or have like a section of the building broken so it does look slightly apocalyptic.
Well, there's always an opportunity when you move something into a different medium and you want to take advantage of the medium's properties. So here we have a game that really has a lot of, like, it's capable of being much more fantastical than real life.
Yeah.
As well as maybe in a television show or a movie, if you were just to do a documentary on it. In the game, yes, you could put forests within it. You could quite easily erect these objects, like nether portals or something, right? You could really take the game mechanics, combine it into the real world setting of the Hunter Street, but then have this weird third space.
Yeah, and even like create like a alternate version of it. Like instead of having these nice shiny white walls and brick walls, you make it all like nether-like, so you have like reds and browns and things that make it look real dark, dank, and evil and things.
Already
like that.
Thinking of Stranger Things type inversion. that you could do
the upside down of the art school.
Yeah, look, and what's interesting is going from the concept to the execution. I think everyone has these ideas when they're playing a game or they're getting inspired by something. The real challenge is actually moving it to execution. So again, it's really worth checking that out on the 16th of December, Images of Tasmania. Here we do have a really interesting image of Tasmania that has been captured, I think, during a time which has made it more important than other times, right? Being able to recreate a space which for quite a while we were locked out of, or was a kind of no-go space, as many schools were. Interestingly, it reminds me of one other article I was reading about, at the a month or two into cinemas being closed. There was an article, I think, on Kotaku, a popular video games web resource, saying gamers were going into Grand Theft Auto just to enjoy the pleasure of going into a cinema in that game, right? So not playing the game, but just wanting nostalgically to go into a cinema because you just couldn't do it.
Yeah,
I think you still can't,
hear about
right?
that. That's great.
Yeah. So all these really interesting stories coming out around people finding new value in the open world game because of not being able, or the rules that we have to live by today, suddenly defining value in these games in new ways.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
I did hear some other stories of like music festivals and graduation ceremonies being created in Minecraft as well, and everyone's participating in this event in Minecraft, and I'm like, that's so amazing. It's like people are locked at home, but then they're coming up with other ways to get around that lockdown that's still well and truly safe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that, what is it, when the world gives you lemons, turn it into lemonade, right? So here, when we're stuck in a online teaching space, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get crazy, because whatever happened to the like we used to have the was it Second Life?
Oh yeah,
kind of thing. And that guy, like I hadn't thought about that at all until suddenly everything's being taught online and engagement's online, and then it's like, wow, we've come a long way since Second Life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Discord, Twitch, some of the online learning spaces, and then Minecraft itself. And as you're saying, some of the music festivals which were popping up in locations like Fortnite and other gaming spaces.
Yeah.
Weird convergences. And of course, what's interesting to me is the mechanics, like who benefits in that space, are slightly different, right? That particularly if they're in proprietary spaces like Fortnite, right? What are the flows of revenue which exist in that space, which are different from what would be in the real world if a concert was going to be done?
Yeah. I heard stories of, I think it was the ambassador of the World Health Organization. He was saying, you should play video games while you're in lockdown because it will keep your mind active and keep yourself going. I'm like, There used to be like, oh, you shouldn't play video games. This is bad for your health, kind of thing. But now they're sort of during lockdown, they sort of turn their opinion around, and like, this is fantastic. This has given the games that positive response that they need.
Yeah, look, it's been interesting to collect stories around the use of video games in the COVID space. And I think, in fact, it's a good teaser for what we'll chat to after the next song break, which is some of the interesting work coming out around exploring, capturing the use of video games today. And we might go through the survey, which the ABC has posted up around exploring your own habits as a gamer. So keep listening to a Media Tackle. This is Craig Norris, joined by Paul Conley on Edge Radio 99.3. Alrighty, you're listening to Edge Radio. This is Media Paddock with me, Craig Norris, PhD, and the one and only Paul Conley, student, extravaganza, artist, mini gaming
Player?
kind of player. Mini gaming player. You're not mini, you're maxi. The maxi gaming player. We're talking everything in and around the world of video games today, and particularly while we're off air, it was a song break, we were talking about challenges we set ourselves when we play games. But let's get to know you a little bit more, Paul, before we launch into that. And I mentioned there's a survey going on at the moment. It's worth checking out. Let me give people the details, because it's one of these really interesting moments in time to ask yourself some hard questions about the media you use around you. And this is a survey, a piece of research coming out of the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association, which are doing a project on video game playing during the a COVID period. And it's also linked to a Four Corners report, and you can participate in this survey right now. If you just do a search on Four Corners video game survey, you'll probably find it. And but it asks some really good questions that are just kind of icebreaker questions, right? If you go to a party, if you go to a dinner, what are some good icebreakers to ask people you know are gamers? Well, let's see if these would work naturally in a conversation. So, okay, so in character, hi Paul, nice to see you.
Hi.
What gaming devices do you mostly use? That sounded natural.
Currently, it's mostly the PlayStation.
All right, so you've got a PlayStation, what number?
4.
4?
I haven't
right.
got to the 5 yet.
That's quite a desirable bit of tech, which I'm sure is on many people's Christmas lists. Of course, it hit a brick wall when they announced it, right? There was all these pre-sales which couldn't be fulfilled, and it's another drama. So you're on the 4, and that's actually the engine you used to create the Minecraft world through, right? Which is really interesting, and I would say setting yourself up with quite a challenge, because I think of doing it on a PC being a little more malleable, but doing it on a PlayStation, a little tougher.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out over the years with newer consoles being released. PlayStation 5 is backwards compatible with PlayStation 4, so I can keep going even when I get a PlayStation 5. But yeah, basically the PlayStations, I've still got my other 3, the PlayStation 1, 2, 3. Don't play them as regularly anymore, but I still have them there. It's like, do I feel like playing an old game?
Well, those PlayStation devices have always been quite, let's use the term disruptive technologies, particularly the second one with the integration of the DVD player, which was just really groundbreaking in terms of the, I guess, consumer entry point it was offered at, where people could get the, kind of like a Wii in some ways, in terms of really people bought it because it had a DVD player as well, right? So some people just had it to play DVDs, and the games was a secondary thing, but it got games into that space like the Wii did in terms of integrating gaming in narratives which aren't about the stereotype of the teenage boy doing hardcore gaming, first-person shooters, and so forth. So yeah, the PlayStation's definitely one of these amazing moments in gaming history.
And it helped with, like, the Wii, you say, helped with people getting active. So you had, like, the controllers, they can do, like, boxing or running or all these different active activities.
Feels like a lifetime ago that the Wii, but it's not really that long ago, but it does feel like a lifetime ago in terms of, and again, it's one of those things, as we were saying earlier in the discussion, that, you were mentioning, what's his name, the World Health Organizer chief saying, maybe this is a good opportunity to play games because it could be positive.
Yeah.
I think the Wii laid some of the groundwork for the conversation being much broader around who plays games and why they play games than just, again, that idea that it's teenage boys in their bedrooms playing the game that's a violent one. That the Wii kind of laid the groundwork that, it can be Ellen Page or someone playing it. It can be Oprah. It can be in retirement centers, right? It really did, bust open a lot of those myths, as well as when the Wii and Nintendo copped a bit of flack for not delivering on some of the hardcore gaming experiences. The Wii management were really upfront saying, that's not our market. We're looking at really mainstream mum and dads, kids, retirees. Yeah. We're not about appeasing one market. And, let's not talk about Gamergate and all of this kind of toxicity. But okay, so you don't have any portable devices? Do you portable game?
Well, I have my phone, which I play the odd game on there. Fate Grand Order, which is basically it's based on an anime. It's about historical figures throughout history that fight in the secret war.
Right, what's it called?
Fate Grand Order.
Fate Grand Order, right. So, and the Fate series is, a really popular anime series. It has historical and...
It has, like, King Arthur, Gilgamesh...
but then you also have real historical characters like...
you have like Jack the Ripper, you have Sherlock Holmes.
Who's fictional.
Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc.
Yes.
Maybe you have few of those. Okay, so on the mobile, we've got some gaming action happening, but mainly it's the PS4.
Mainly the PS4, yeah.
And which games are you playing mostly on this?
Well, Minecraft is a always going thing. Lately I've been getting into the Uncharted series, which is basically... the Indiana Jones version for a video game where you have to swing across bridges and shoot the bad guys and unlock these puzzles to get you to the next area where you're discovering the ancient ruins of ancient pirate civilization or somewhere along those lines.
Look, and that's such an interesting point that you mentioned Indiana Jones, because in many ways the success of the Uncharted series and the formula that it's playing to, that is that kind of Indiana Jones adventure, quest, story, does show that, video games can sometimes take up the mantle of storytelling, which absolutely. Movies won't. So the failure of the last Indiana Jones movie, the kind of lukewarm reception of it, it's many years back now, but the sense that genre of action storytelling had not been what audiences want is wrong if you look at Uncharted, because it's basically delivering so satisfyingly that experience. And in fact, in many ways, it's been one of those series which fans have been crying out to be made into a movie. Yeah. I know Nathan Fillion?
Yeah, there was that fan-made one with Nathan Fillion. There is that new one that has Tom Harding playing a younger Nate Drake.
And that is coming out. That was a real story.
Yeah.
Right? I never know, because, you've got things like Akira, the classic anime movie, being picked up by Keanu Reeves or Leonardo DiCaprio and going to be made, and then it's never going to happen.
Yeah. So I've seen some set images where Tom Holland is on set with Nolan North, who voices Nathan Drake in the games, and they're like having a bit of a discussion about what would Nate do here, such and such. He's kind of like a expert on the character. Well,
and I think that's another thing which has changed around if we can call it maybe the mothership custodian. The mothership custodian, mixing my metaphors. But anyway, the idea that the main association of a media franchise can be a voice actor, which was pretty much unheard of maybe until the silent era. The talkies, the radio dramas maybe had voice actors as being popular. But in Western entertainment, no one really thought about voice actors being significant holders of a franchise. But now you've got, what's his name, who does the voice of Kevin Conroy, that does the Batman voice from the animated series, being seen as a quintessential Batman entity. And then you have video game voice actors being brought in as the custodians of the series, right?
Nolan North has voiced Nathan Drake throughout every single game, so it's good to get the consistency.
He's quite a famous voice actor.
He's done a lot of things.
Yeah, and there are fans around it. I mean, it's interesting. The research I was doing on manga and anime, or anime in particular, really surprised me in terms of the celebrity culture of voice actors and actresses.
Yeah.
That really I hadn't seen until I started, hearing stories about this from video game communities, loving some of the voice actors behind that. So Uncharted's been one that you've been playing lately.
Nier Automata has been another one. Oh, it's a Japanese role-playing game, or JRPG as gamers like to call it, where it's basically a post-apocalyptic world where, spoiler alert, humanity's been extinct for thousands and thousands of years, and now you basically have androids and robots battling each other. The robots basically being on the side of the aliens that invaded long after the humans went extinct, and the androids, which were the creation of the humans, so they're trying to be as human-like as possible. And it's a very deeply philosophical game. You have characters that are called Jean-Paul and Simone and Pascal, and despite it being an anime game, it's very existentialist.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I think a lot of while that stuff can flow over you, you might not at all associate significant philosophical thinkers with those names. Nevertheless, if you do, or it could be an entry point into learning about that, it does show how games can be an unexpected source of knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. There's been several games where I've learned a particular thing. I'm say an action game where you have an inventory, you have to sort of manage your resources. Do I need this thing now? No, I don't. And then even at work, if I'm placing items into a bag, the customer will be like, oh, I'm not sure if that will fit in there. So don't worry, I've played Tetris. It'll fit.
Yeah, the Tetris connection is such a good one in terms of being able to compartmentalize and figure out the storage problems around you. But yeah, it does also remind me of the other story of people who have played some of the Assassin's Creed game being informative tour guides.
Yeah,
when they've gone to locations like the real Italy, and they've gone there, and the son's been playing Assassin's Creed set in that location, even though it's from a different eon.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they suddenly become a tour guide for the parents.
And it's a good education resource, because it's talking about things throughout the games they've talked about the French Revolution, the American Civil War, and all these different events that have happened in real life, and they're oh, this happened and this happened, and drawing the people in, and they're the kids who are playing are thinking, oh, that sounds interesting. I want to learn more about that.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Tetris, because you did mention while we were off air the challenge you set yourself in Tetris.
So yeah, it's kind of off the cuff. I set myself a challenge in a marathon game where over the course of the 15 levels of speed the game has, I had to get 600 lines, which is the maximum the game will allow me. 600 lines. And I got to about line 150, and the game was like, okay, you're at level 15 now. And I'm like, oh no, it's going so fast. And I died on many, many occasions. And eventually I finished, and I saw the time it took me, and it was 50 minutes. I'm like, did I just play Tetris in VR, mind you? So I had the headset on, it was all going on around me, and it took me just under an hour to do 600 lines.
See, and this challenge that we set ourselves really reminded me of a really interesting way to play games. I mean, I guess you can do it in other mediums when you watch a movie without the sound or something, but you do something to the media that you're engaged with, so it completely changes your perspective. So there's an article I was reading saying, don't change the difficulty setting. Make games harder with these challenges, right? So like you were telling me about the there was one article which talked about a son who wanted to play Call of Duty, and the dad was really ambivalent about allowing his son playing such a game which he saw as being quite violent and maybe not promoting the best kind of calming influence on his son. So how did the dad approach this dilemma of allowing his son or not to play Call of Duty, a game, again, first-person shooter, when you're playing a soldier shooting bad guys? How did he approach that?
So the father basically said to his son, okay, I'm going to buy this game for you, but first you have to research the Geneva Convention first. And once you've learned about it, you learn what the rules are of war, then I'll buy you the game. And then you have to play the game according to the Geneva Convention rules.
So what a crazy idea, playing Call of Duty according to the Geneva Convention, right? And obviously within the Geneva Convention, there's ideas of how you can treat soldiers when they're surrendering. And it's such a really wonderful way of saying, yes, there can be violence in this game. For a superficial thought about Call of Duty or GTA might be that, these are just violence generators. Nevertheless, though, here we have a case of, how about if we play according to this rule set then, right? The Geneva Convention, learning about why this convention was required, what it means. And do you reckon you could play the game? Have you played a Call of Duty game?
I've never played a Call of Duty game in my life.
I have. Well, there's certainly in the infamous No Russia level of one of the later Call of Duty games, where basically you're a covert op in a Russian terrorist cell, and it's the first mission in the game, and it's called No Russian because I can't remember. But anyway, you're basically involved in a terrorist attack on an airport, and you would not be able to proceed any further in this game. Can you play the game without shooting anyone? Yeah, I mean, again, this is one of these ideas of, rather than changing the difficulty of the game, set yourself a challenge where you do a no violence run.
Change the rule of the game for yourself.
I mean, it was reminding me, I was doing a big quick search on it, and there was a guy that posted a challenge saying, play Pokemon the Christian way. Right, which is an interesting concept. And the idea being here, and some of it I think is a bit tongue-in-cheek, but the idea being that players cannot let their Pokemon evolve, which is quite a political statement, I think, to come out with. I mean, I guess when he says the Christian playthrough, it's talking about a particularly hardcore narrative of what I'd imagine is the mythical US evangelist Christianity idea. So anyway, players cannot let their Pokemon evolve. Players cannot catch dark, psychic, or ghost Pokemon, nor can they use moves of those types. I like this one. Pokemon must be at least level 22 before they breed, which is that idea of no sex before marriage. Right?
It got me thinking, actually, is like, you can't let your Pokemon evolve. Would that be like not letting your child grow up?
Well, see, this is the great thing about setting these challenges. It gets you talking.
Yeah,
It gets you asking questions. It says also, two Pokemon of the same sex cannot share a daycare center. I'm not sure about it. I'm not much of a Pokemon player, so I must admit, some of the mechanics are a bit lost on me. If a player obtains an egg, it's their duty to keep it in their party and raise it until it reaches level 18. So I think that's a good nurturing narrative.
Get to adulthood first.
In fact, that point's a really interesting one about the Pokemon. The reason Pokemon works so well, I've heard some research talk about how it's such a great property because it's able to integrate what would be stereotypically defined as masculine and feminine engagement patterns. That is, it has within Pokemon a kind of masculine narrative of battle, right? So it can appeal to gamers, young and old, who just enjoy a particular mechanics around, a kind of chess battle. Then also it has a nurturing narrative, right? Again, stereotypically associated with a different type of gameplay where you're doing a kind of Tamagotchi act, right? You're raising and nurturing and not at all having to worry about the other mechanic of battle. So many people talk about Pokemon being one of these really interesting games which kind of balances that, as well as one which some people can grow up with, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those ones which you can grow up with, which is so difficult to attain, right? Nothing's more lost than I think that kind of early child, or not early childhood, but I guess that childhood gaming experience which you just get away from when you're a teen.
Yeah.
You don't want to be associated with.
I think like there aren't many games like I've grown up with throughout my years since I was a child. Like when I was younger in primary school, I had Alex Kidd. and then he sort of like went away for a really long time and is only just about to make a comeback. And so I was like, I've lost that part. But when I started playing the PlayStation, I got into Tekken, one of the fighting games. And I've sort of like followed that along all the way through since about 95, round about there. And so I noticed, like, growing up and sort of growing up with games, I noticed I'd prefer a narrative in the game rather than no narrative. And Tekken was starting to lose that narrative I was witnessing. And so I said to myself, when the next game comes out, which was Tekken 7, was the most recent installment, if the story's lacking, I think I'm just going to let it go. But then they brought that story back, and it was so much richer than I was expecting. It's like it's bringing back the history of the game before the first game, and like, okay, you've won me back now here a bit. It started to lose me again when they started bringing in all these like DLC characters, downloadable characters, like you had Noctis from Final Fantasy. You had I forget his name, the guy from The Walking Dead with the baseball bat.
Well, and look, I mean,
Negan.
Yeah, looking at that trend is quite interesting in terms of, I'd again say it draws its heritage back from fan roots. That is, this idea that, particularly with those massive fighting games where suddenly you had cross-game platforms being integrated into it, you had characters from other game series. It is a bit like the fan fiction genre in terms of, people combining your Pulp Fiction characters in Battlestar Galactica or something, or this type of desire to just break apart the gaming space. In fact, one of the spaces which has been most unusual for that is Lego. The fact that you can have these Lego movies which incorporate cross-proprietary limited stuff, and I think some of that, if done well, can work really well in terms of create unusual experiences through that juxtaposition, characters that you wouldn't normally... Because there was one, I don't know if it was Tekken or something, but there was one new fighting game where they had Rambo suddenly appear as one of the characters in the fighting game. Might have been Mortal Kombat.
It might have been Mortal Kombat, I think,
which is such an interesting gesture. Again, bringing back this character from the 80s. You wonder who the market is.
Yeah, I think that it's like trying to bring back some of those other... outside the field fans of different things like Rambo. I think it was Mortal Kombat again that brought in Predator, and they're trying to bring back all these older generations. Like, and of course, hey, check out, you can play as Predator.
I mean, I'd say, again, the roots for that is pop culture in some way. Like, there were always mods, even way back in Doom, in terms of having the Simpsons mod, where you turn this game, which is basically a kind of, again, first-person shooter where you're playing as this alpha male character, but then a mod basically changed all the characters to be the Simpsons characters, and you were firing out the donuts or something. Anyway, well, that's the top of the hour. We've done the show. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
It's gone very quickly. So again, I hope some of you have enjoyed this discussion around Memory Block. Again, you can find that during the Images of Tasmania exhibition starting on the 16th of December. Check it out. Some great work there, as well as Paul's great project on Minecraft and the replication of the Hunter Street campus. So keep listening to Edge Radio 99.3.